numéro 60.
Welcome to meeting number 62 of the Subcommittee on International Human Rights of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. Let me remind participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed to the chair. I will ask members to raise their hands if you wish to speak, whether you are attending in person or via Zoom. The committee clerk and I will do our best to maintain the speaking order. Before introducing our witnesses, I would like to take a moment to draw my colleagues' attention to a budget that was distributed to members last week. The budget authorizes expenditures for a study on the current status of Ukrainian deported children. If members are ready to adopt this budget, we can do so now. Otherwise, if members would like more time to review the budget, we can return to it next week. Now, is the subcommittee ready to adopt the budget now? Carried. I declare the budget adopted. Now we'll move on to the study on the current status of deported Ukrainian children pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the subcommittee on the 5th of November 2024. The subcommittee is beginning its study of the current status of deported Ukrainian children. I would like to welcome our witnesses. Ms. Olga Timchenko, Independent Strategic Communications Consultant. Save Ukraine, Mykola Kuleba, Chief Executive Officer, Voices of Children. Veronica Sheldageva. You will be given a maximum of 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will open the floor to questions.
OK. Bienvenue.
Welcome, Ms. Timchenko. I now invite you to make your opening statement of up to 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Дякую. Доброго дня, пані та панове. Мене звати Ольга Тимченко, і я маю...
My name is Olga Timchenko, and I have the honor to tell you the story of Valeria, an 18-year-old girl who is a symbol of resilience and fight for freedom for me personally. Her life had forever changed on February 24th, 2022, when her hometown of Nova Kakhovka in Kherson region came under Russian occupation. Before the war, Valeria was a regular teenager. She loved dancing, aerial gymnastics. She loved walking along the banks of the river Dnipro and dream of the future. All of this came to a halt that morning when tanks with the letter Z and military heavy equipment appeared on the streets of the city. At first, nobody understood what was going on, but then everyone saw a Russian flag being hung on the building of the hydroelectric power station. That's when everyone understood the war has really started. Life under occupation was unbearable. Valeria was constantly in fear. There was shelling and explosions. Due to fear, she had continuous tinnitus. And the war started in October 2022 when the Russian occupiers started to, quote-unquote, evacuate the children. On October 8th, Valeria, with more than 500 other children from Nova Kakhovka, were forcibly taken to the occupied Crimea by the Russians. They were loaded onto 14 buses, and they were taken under military police convoy. The children were told this was temporary, only for 2 weeks, but this was not true. Valeria spent 2 months in the Promenisty camp in Yevpatoria. At that time, she was only 16. Life in the camp was unbearable. The mornings began with the singing of the Russian anthem, followed by lessons in which the children were told a false version of history. The teachers insisted that the Holodomor never happened and that Chernobyl was a fiction. There was a lot of propaganda about the greatness of Russia, and children were told that their future lies with Russia. Children were also pressured to move to Russia. They were promised all sorts of benefits only if they agreed to receive a Russian passport. Valeria was shocked to find out that sick children couldn't even get health care without agreeing to take on the Russian nationality. It was especially difficult to watch the youngest children, aged 5 or 6 years old in this camp. They were dirty, they were coughing, they had head lice. The camp did not provide them with not even the most basic of conditions. There was no medication, and children were punished. 2 months later, her grandmother came to pick up Valeria, and she was allowed to leave the camp on condition that she would return. But she risked everything and decided to go to Ukraine, to the unoccupied territories. She traveled alone through Russian checkpoints in Mariupol, Rostov, and Belgorod. Valeria went through the filtration camps in Russia and had to walk for 2 hours with her bags through a minefield. When she finally saw Ukrainian soldiers, she burst into tears. In Ukraine, Valeria was all alone and had no family around her. But she passed an exam, entered a medical college in Kyiv, and she had a dorm room and a scholarship and the opportunity to study. I met her in winter of 2023. She was full of pain, but determined to continue and build her future. I decided to support her and take her into my custody, and she accepted. So for 9 months now, we have been living together. We are a family. And during this time, I have seen how deep Valeria's desire is to help others. She is studying to become a doctor, and her dream is to treat sick and wounded and the war victims. Her story is the story of every child in Ukraine who's seen the war, lost their childhood, but remains strong. It is also a reminder of the thousands of children who are still under occupation, deprived of their basic rights. So I urge you to support Ukraine, support our children, freedom and dignity. Thank you for your faith and for your attention.
Thank you. Timing. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Madame Mykola Kuleba to take the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity.
I am sorry, Mr. Mykola Kuleba. We are not familiar with the name. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. And today, I speak to you about a tragedy that transcends borders, the plight of Ukrainian children. Nearly 50% of the population of children in Ukraine have been displaced, deported, or lost to Russia's war on Ukraine. These children are not just numbers. Half of our children are at risk. And with it, our very future and the very soul of our nation. For our children still in Ukraine, around 1.6 million of those living in Russia and occupied territories have been subjected to relentless indoctrination and medieval colonization by the Kremlin since 2014. They are forced to adopt Russian language, culture, values, and traditions, stripping them to their Ukrainian identities and fostering loyalty to the occupying power, including eventually forced conscription to the Russian armed forces. Only 19,546 have been officially identified as forcibly deported since the full-scale invasion, which is a huge number, but still inaccurate, and as such underscores the vast scale of this atrocity and the urgent need for action to locate and return these children. In occupied territories, schools erase Ukrainian history, calling our country a failed state. Children as young as 6 are enrolled in militarized programs, dressed in Russian uniforms, and raised to hate the West. Many frontline Russian fighters today were once Ukrainian children, molded by this propaganda since 2014. A 10-year-old boy then is now a 20-year Russian soldier. Even more alarming is the forced conscription of Ukrainian boys as young as 17 from the territories occupied since 2022. These boys, coerced into accepting Russian passports, are turned into soldiers for the aggressor state. This process violates a number of international instruments, including the Geneva Convention, as it represents a deliberate strategy to use young Ukrainians as a weapon against their own people. Consider Sergei, 17 years old, forced to accept a Russian passport under threat of losing his property soon after armed soldiers issued him a draft notice at gunpoint. With our help, Sergei escaped, but many others remain trapped in this horrifying cycle. All these actions bear the signs of genocide. Thousands of Ukrainian children are being systematically turned into instruments of war, victims of a conflict they never choose. At Save Ukraine, we fight to save these children and preserve an entire generation. We have rescued over 500 children, providing trauma-informed, child-sensitive, and evidence-based care to heal the deep scars of war and propaganda and indoctrination. Our services reintegrate these rescued children and families into society, helping them rebuild their lives and reclaim their identity. But we cannot do this alone. Canada has shown the world the power, responsibility, and leadership. Your support across parties has been pivotal, from leading coalitions to return deported children to partnership with HALA system for child identification and returning some of them. We also deeply appreciate the Ukrainian diaspora. Ukrainian Children Congress and organizations like the Canada-Ukraine Foundation and Timothy Foundation for their unwavering support. Every child saved is a future restored. Together we can ensure no Ukrainian children left behind, no identity erased, no dream stolen. I look forward to the question to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite Madame Veronika Sheldageva to take the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Hello, dear committee. My name is Veronika Sheldagaeva. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Kherson, a city in Ukraine that was military occupied by Russians in March 2022 when I was 13. I lived under the military occupation for 7 months. I'm here to speak because I escaped, but many are not. At the beginning of occupation, people took to the streets to protest against the invasion, against Russia. My teachers and friends were among those who protested, but then Russians started shooting them at protests. In the early days, people, instead of panic, emptied all food from shops, and later food was rarely replemented. Some farmers from villages attempted to bring in provisions, but the Russians halved them at checkpoints and halved from their supplies. The queues for bread were endless. My parents were in those queues for a long time. We couldn't find toothpaste anywhere, and yes, was being exchanged by people as if it was as valuable as gold. I remember how my parents used to divide groceries at home to make them last as long as possible, and that would be enough for everyone. At checkpoints and even on the streets, Russian soldiers would check people's phones. If they found anything pro-Ukrainian, they would send people to their makeshift prisons. We called this being taken to the cellar. During occupation, I ran my own volunteer educational online project. One day, an unknown woman messaged me on Telegram and said that it was clear from my post that I had pro-Ukrainian position and that I should follow certain safety rules. I was scared because if some stranger found my contact, anyone can do it. People there live in such a paranoid state constantly. In early months, Ukrainian communication networks were already blocked. For a while, people entirely lived without communication, which is very difficult for a modern person. We couldn't even find out about the danger because there was no air alarm in the city. It was a state of complete uncertainty. The Russians held a pseudo-referendum going door to door with guns and balloons. Obviously, those who refused to participate were in great danger. Yes, with weapons in their hands, Russians even came to my relative's apartment. Soldiers also came to my school and scared our management to force them to their side. They told the parents that if their children refused to attend the occupied schools under Russian curriculum full of propaganda, they would be deprived of their parental rights, and the children will be sent in internet. At the same time, school activities at such schools for some people whom I know ended being deported to Russia without their consent. I didn't go to that school, so I was afraid that I could be taken away. When someone knocked at the door, I used to hide. Eventually, my family and I decided to leave. There was never a safe way out of the occupied territories. We were scared to leave, but it was equally risky to remain there. It was a road during 1 week. The occupation authorities organized metal rafts that were pulled across the Dnieper River by the motorboats. It was very risky construction. After my family and I used it, a rocket hit it within half an hour. Now I live on other side of the front line, and nothing of this is in my life anymore. All that left in memories that, despite of honors, I live with, and I believe in the world that helps Ukraine. I believe in Ukraine. I believe in Ukrainian teenagers. We fight. We do a lot of things. We believe and we are strong. Thank you.
Thank you. Je vous remercie pour vos déclarations.
I thank you for your statements.
Start the debate for questions and answer. And to start, I'd like to invite Mr. Majumdar to take the floor for 7 minutes. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, all three of you, for taking the time to be with us today. Veronica, Merry Christmas, an early one. When you think about how the next month is about to transpire, what is your feeling about where the world is at with respect to you, your friends, and Ukrainian children?
I feel that communication can. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I feel that communication is sometimes hard because you need to explain lots of context about your life, about uncertainties, and so on. And to live in uncertainty and this experience sometimes changed you. But at the same time, I believe that always there are moments when you can communicate and when you can be helpful for others, for peers to understand this experience. If I answered to the question correctly.
You did. You did. Let me also say, every single one of us here, I don't presume to speak for my colleagues, but we admire your courage a great deal and your resilience and how articulate you are. Thank you for being such a powerful voice for your generation that has endured so much hardship. And know that the world is watching and the world is with you. So I appreciate your testimony very much today.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuleba, if I might turn to you, how many children would you say the Kremlin is holding hostage, like Veronica and the story of Valeria we just heard?
Thank you so much, Mr. Majumdar, for your question. It is around 1.6 million Ukrainian children are living under occupation or in Russia, enduring extreme hardship with insufficient access to food, water, hygiene, healthcare, and education. To make matters worse, approximately 744,000 Ukrainian children have been registered in Russia since 2022. As you remember, last year, Maria Lvova-Belova, Putin's commissioner, stated about this number. Maybe now it's bigger number, but these children and their families have been torn from their homes in Ukraine, subjected to an alien culture and denied their Ukrainian identity. How many of them unaccompanied minors? We don't know to this day.
Over 1 million. And in the genocide of the Ukrainian people and civilization 100 years after Holodomor is just a tragedy beyond anything. It's unspeakable. So much of what we talk about in the world today is geopolitical. But in earnest, this is why you fight. This is why Ukraine fights, to restore the promise of over 1 million Ukrainian children, half of the people, half of the youth of the country.
Yeah. This is exactly we fight. Our fight is not just against an aggressor, but for the survival of our identity, our culture, and our future. We are fighting to ensure that our children are not brainwashed, that they are not turned into instruments of war or subjected of a foreign power. Our children should grow up in their own homes with parents and relatives, with the ability to speak their language, to celebrate their culture, and to live their lives as they choose. Russia's action are a direct assault on the essence of who we are as Ukrainians. And for the sake of our children, we must fight back. And you are right. All action they're doing have signs of genocide.
And so here you are on the front lines of resisting the Kremlin's project of colonialization. You mentioned medieval tyranny being imposed on the Ukrainian people. What do you want people in Canada to know and understand about this new imperia, this new imperialism that the Kremlin is imposing on Ukraine, and what's on the line for half your generation, half your young people's future, and indeed all of ours?
We need to understand that this is not just a fight for Ukraine. It is a fight for freedom and humanity. The Kremlin is not satisfied with just Ukraine. They want to extend their control, their influence, and their lies across the globe. They are attempting to indoctrinate our children to create a new generation of soldiers, not just for them, but for the entire world to bow to their authoritarian rule. The lesson they are teaching are aimed at erasing the identity of our children, at teaching them that their homeland does not exist, that their culture is inferior, and that they are part of a larger imperial project. This same tactic was used during the Soviet Union period, and it is being used now on an even larger scale. What should concern the world, and especially the Canadian people, is that this is just the beginning. They will not stop with Ukraine. They will target other vulnerable populations, including children in the West. Their strategy is not just fight Ukraine, but to create chaos across the globe. Russia's imperial ambitions extend far beyond Ukraine's border. They are attempting to destabilize nations, weaken democratic societies, and use children as the pawns in their global power struggle.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Majumdar. Now I invite Madame Vandenberg to take the floor for 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of our witnesses, especially you, Veronica, for the testimony that you're giving today, because you had mentioned in your testimony that you want to be helpful. I can assure you, you are being helpful. And telling these stories, these horrific stories, essentially a brainwashing of an entire generation of children. I think that it's important that this be heard. I also wanted to thank you about Valeria. Olga, the fact that you've taken her into your family. And we hear your stories, but we know how many other children are not able to testify at a committee like this and to tell their stories because they're still there. And we as Canadians, Canada has taken on all of the children who have been kidnapped and taken as if they were Canadian children, as consular cases. And I assure you that we stand with you. But my first question is to Veronica, because you talked about you happened to be in a different school and the fate of the others in the other school that weren't able to escape like you. What is it that you want the world to do for all of those children, the children so much like you who don't have a voice? And what do you want to tell us as legislators here in Canada, but what do you want the world to do?
I would like to, ideally, that nobody would ever experience such brainwashing as now happening in such educational institutions, that nobody would ever go and be scared every day what they will experience today, because it's unpredictable when you're staying in school on occupied territories in such camps as Valeria experienced. And I feel that the most important thing that can world do is to help Ukraine with that aid that you can provide, with spreading information, because silence is something that kills lots of people. I feel that I would like for those children to find a way, someone earlier. It's better always to escape and to live better life on in their peaceful cities, because it's also hard to be IDP or refugee after such experience if your city is still occupied and you're going out. I would like to have understanding from the world and understanding that war is not stopping because of the fact that it is already for more than 10 years.
Thank you very much. And I think your words are going to go a long way in achieving that. And thank you so much for your courage. And I'd like to turn to Olga, because you're also witnessing firsthand the kind of trauma that comes from this. What would you say I mean, we need to make sure that the children are returned, but once they're returned, there's a long road for those children. Is there anything more that the world or that Canada can do to support these children once they are in a safe place? And then I would ask you also the same thing. What do you want the world to do to ensure that these Ukrainian children are returned and that they remain Ukrainian children?
Дякую дуже за питання.
Thank you for this question. It's very important to exert pressure on Russia through any means possible, be it diplomatically or otherwise, in order to pressure it to return our children. When these children come back, they need a long process of rehabilitation and care. In Valeria's case, for example, she has panic attacks as soon as she hears Russian language. She believes that Russians may be present, and as Veronica said, anything could happen. It's unpredictable. When she hears thunder or explosions, she has a panic attack. She's very afraid to cross any kind of border. We went to Poland with her, which is a safe border, but she will often have heart palpitations. She starts erasing her phone because this situation leads her to be triggered. She starts being afraid that she will be taken away somewhere. These children need a long process of rehabilitation. Valeria has been working with a psychologist for over a year, and only now she's starting to become better. If there are any programs, best practices exchanges in Canada, maybe camps for children like this where they could travel and get some rest. So those would be some ideas to mention.
Are doing as well, and for articulating that. And I think there's some very important things that perhaps we could follow up in terms of providing support for some of these young children. I have a question also for Mykola. I don't know how much time I have left, Mr. Chair. I have 1 minute. So very, very shortly, you're talking about young boys as young as 17 who are being forcibly conscripted to turn around and fight essentially against their own people. And of course, that would amount to child soldiers at 17. These are minors. You talked about international law, but what more can be done to ensure that international law is actually upheld in these instances?
Thank you. Mr. Clark, please, before you speak, can you please lower you? Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, lower it, please. Can you lower it, please? Put it down a little bit? Yes. Is it okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a very hard question. We have to...
It should be between your nose and your mouth. It should be between your nose and your mouth. Yes. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. It's a very hard question, and it's very hard to answer and give any recommendation to United Nations or big organization. I stated last year in United Nations Security Council and in many parliaments, and my message is simple. I know that in 10 or 20 years we will prove that what happened now with Ukrainian children, it is genocide. But why we can do now? Why we can do make it so huge pressure on Russia with sanctions to stop this war and to help innocent children to come back to Ukrainian territory, to help these families, to reunite these families. Because we every day repatriating kids from their territories. And it is horrible. I cannot imagine if my child would be stolen, and nobody can imagine. But it happened in Ukraine right now. And we need a strong voice around the globe for Ukrainian children.
Thank you. Thank you, Madame Van den Bend. Maintenant, j'invite Monsieur Brunel.
Now I'll call on Mr. Junel Duceppe to take the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Did you say 7 minutes? Thank you to all our witnesses for being present for this very important study. I have no choice. I will start with you, Veronica. I think your testimony was very upsetting. I have a 21-year-old boy. I have a 19-year-old and 13-year-old daughters. I'll make sure that they listen to your testimony so that we can educate the youth here when it comes to the reality of the children in Ukraine. It's very important, the message you gave, and that message should be heard throughout the world. I have a question for you. What is your greatest dream, Veronica?
I guess that each Ukrainian now have the same dream to have a victory in this war, to have no occupied territories, to have people who are psychologically healthy, who went through hard experience but working on rebuilding. And I guess my biggest dream is to look around myself, look at all people around and understand that even we went through everything, we are connected. We're a really talented community with civil society, because I'm a person who is really connected to civil society. So that are going to do innovations to build really good country. So thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Véronica, pour ça.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Mr. Kuleba, it's thanks to you that we are having today's session. You educated all parties on the importance of organizing this meeting, so I thank you for that. I have more technical questions for you, Mr. Kuleba. First of all, it's thanks to NGOs like yours that we were able to find children in Russia and bring them back to Ukraine. Thanks to your work, could you tell the committee the strategies that have turned out to be efficient in ensuring the return of those children?
Thank you. We have a program through the support of Canada with HALA systems, how identify and locate Ukrainian children, stolen children especially. And we are building communication with that kids and finding their relatives and parents. And our returns or repatriation look like underground railroad for these kids, because Russia banning any ways to take this child to Ukraine. If you are a mother going to Russia to take your child, you will be deported back to Ukraine and banned for 20 years to come to Russia or Belarus. That's why our return is like a special operation. We are working with the special services. And after that, what is extremely important, and Veronica told you very powerful things about mental health, about recovering. We are building services on the ground in local communities for different children, different categories, for orphans, for children who experience sexual abuse, for babies, families with babies, for pregnant women. They are extremely vulnerable. And especially families of veterans, extremely vulnerable, and very often they have huge trauma. And we need strong support to rebuild our country, to build a new country based on democratic principles, together with you, together with all civilized world, because we are democratic country. And you are great example for us. And many Ukrainians came to your country to build your country 100 years ago and more. And we want to do it together with you. And we believe in our victory, and we believe that we can rebuild our country.
Monsieur Kuleba, vous avez...
Mr. Kuleba, in an interview with Le Monde, you said that the Russification of Ukrainian children increased since the International Court of Justice issued a warrant of arrest against Putin and also against Maria Lvova-Belova. And since then, it has been difficult to repatriate children. Could you please explain how Russia's approach has changed since March of 2023?
Yes, situation is very hard. And after receiving warrant order from International Criminal Court, and it's many kids disappeared from social media, and you will not find information about where they are, how many have been placed to Russian families. Just today was announced Yale laboratory research about more than 300 children who've been placed to Russian families. And through this research, we have clarity that we found that Russian officials, including President Putin, directly authorized the forced adoption and fostering of Ukrainian children, a program deemed a potential war crimes or crimes against humanity. It's very hard. On the other hand, it's hard because every day Russian propaganda, what is poisoning Ukrainian children and erase their identity. Very often when we connect with a child very afraid to come back to control Ukrainian territory because they believe through Russian propaganda that Nazi will kill them. It's very hard to convince innocent child that no one will hurt a child in Ukraine. But because propaganda, many children believe. They attend in Russian school, even kindergarten, and Russian brainwashed children everywhere.
Thank you. Time is running out. Merci. Now I invite Mr. John to take the floor for 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank our witnesses for their very important and very moving and powerful testimony. I'm going to start with you, Veronica. Veronica, can you speak about how the trauma of the war has continued to impact your life and the lives of your friends, and just to follow up on what you think in terms of additional supports might be necessary when children are returned home to Ukraine that could be provided?
Thank you for the question. I feel that for me, it became a part of my mental health already. And I guess this feeling of uncertainty and not understanding what would be next differs me a lot from my friends abroad. for example, who are pretty sure in their next years. This also includes people who are on free territories of Ukraine, but still experiencing war. Also, I have close friends who are experiencing horrors at night. They're returning back. They have the same horror that remains with them. People become more anxious, and as I talked with psychologists, your concentration can be decreased because of this fact, because your mental health is trying to work with everything that you know. And I still feel that I'm missing sometimes part of my memories because I'm simply trying to move on and live my life. What can be done? I guess it's really important to have centralized psychological health that is available not only for people who have lots of material resources, who are living in big cities, who have money, but also I am really thankful that I found Voices of Children at some point of time. We started working with them really long time ago, and this helped. I also feel that involvement of youth, children, and so on, it's really important because when you feel that you're needed, that you're helping others, you are finding people with similar experiencing, and you have that peer support from people who experience the same, that sometimes it's the most important thing to live your life. And I guess the thing that includes all the things that I said, we need to speak about this experience, because only if you're formulating it from your head to texts, to talks, to everything, you finally understanding what happened with you. Because there, even if you have lots of time to think, without internet, without connection, without everything, but you cannot reflect there. So you need to go and understand that now it's part of you. We cannot cancel out experiences. We can only try to make something that other people would not experience the same as us. Thank you.
You're incredibly wise, Veronica. Veronica, can you speak about how important it is to you that other countries continue to stand with Ukraine, and how can individuals who have platforms continue to raise the awareness of the plight of Ukrainian children?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I guess that it becomes the basic, but you really need to do it when you're spreading information through social media. That became one of the most powerful instruments. Now also we all know that there is a social media internet war with spreading information, with propaganda and so on. So it's important for individuals to spread information that officials are posting. I feel also it's important not to forget about charities, foundation, and so on, because it's something where lots of people are gathering together, and through small help, they can help each other. It's really important that other countries are at least believing you. Now I'm in international community and I'm communicating with people all around the world a lot. And I feel sometimes uh, you just need to explain it first context and then your life experience, because it's quite normal that you don't know, for example, for countries who are on other continent, as Ukraine and Canada, for example, but when you're connected morally through values, it's really important to know about each other, because Ukraine is not only a country who is now asking for help, it's a great partner. We have lots of experiences that I feel we can share with those countries who are ready to be now with us. And I personally always check some news, and when I see communication through Ukraine and other countries, other embassies, communication parliament, and so on, personally, for me, it's a thing that I really like. I really appreciate. It makes me warm on my heart. Because once again, when you feel you're not alone, it's the main point where you can be strong. You can rely on yourself, but is it effective? I don't think so.
Thank you,
so much.
Veronica.
Thank you.
Mr. John. On behalf of the committee, I would like to thank you all, Madame Timchenko, Monsieur Kuleba, and Madame Sheldageva, for your presence, your testimony. It is really appreciated. A special thank again to Veronica. Veronica, you touch my heart, and believe you touch the hearts of all committee members. Wish you the best. Thank you all. We have to suspend for a couple of minutes for the next round. Thank you. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue
I would like to welcome our next group of witnesses. I welcome Ms. Irina Suslova, representative for the rights of children. You will be given a maximum of 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will move on to questions and answers. Welcome, Ms. Suslova. I call on you now to make your opening remarks. You have 5 minutes at the most.
Дякую, вітаю, пані та панове.
Thank you very much. Thank you for ongoing support of Ukraine. I represent the Office of the Representative in Children's Rights of the Office of President of Ukraine, and I would like to talk to you about the people, children that are currently on the occupied territories who were forcibly transferred there. From the beginning of the aggression, and according to data from Information Bureau, more than 25 children were deported or forcefully transferred. But as you can tell, that we don't really have real data, because in some of the other informations we have that more than 700 people are in 700,000 children were transferred.
These children are so-called evacuated, but that is not really true because humanitarian corridors should be opened for evacuation. Unfortunately, after February 24, 2022, there hasn't been a single humanitarian corridor opened to let these children pass. 1.5 million children remain on occupied territories. We are collecting information about war crimes that the Russian Federation perpetrates against our children, including militarizing the education, changing the education, propaganda. Children are being taken under the pretext of rehabilitation for 2,000 kilometers away from their homes. If the parents protest, they're told that their children will simply be taken away without consent. All establishments that existed in Russia are now filled with Ukrainian children. Who are these children? Some of them lost their parents because of the war. Some of them are there because they were just taken from their parents without any kind of consent. We don't know. However, as the Commissioner's Office, we have to collect information about all the children who were forcibly removed or deported, about all the children who are today on the occupied territories, about how they are doing, how their rights are violated. We have to inform IRCC and other international organizations. We have to locate these children, understand where exactly they are. We work with governmental and non-governmental organizations, with investigative journalists outside Ukraine who help us use open source information to locate these children. We work on the verification of these children with databases in Russia that are open. For example, the adoptions website in Russia, there's over 300 cases where we see that children who are being put up for adoption are Ukrainian children who are being placed into foster care or being adopted into Russian families. All of this constitutes war crimes, and unfortunately, no one can help us return these children today. I have a story of Margarita Prokopenko. She has a brother who is somewhere, we don't know where they are. They were in one of the orphanages in Kherson that we didn't have the time to evacuate. Margarita was taken by the wife of Sergei Mironov, a Russian politician. Her name was changed. Her date of birth and place of birth were changed. We found her sister, who's been placed into a family. We restored the information and we were prepared to reunite the children, but the Russian Federation keeps denying us access to this child, saying we are making this up and no such child exists. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these cases, and I believe you'll hear more about this from the next speaker. What should we be doing now, once we know where the children are? We have to look for ways to get them back. One of such ways that the Ombudsman uses is through Qatar. We are using negotiations to get children back, but this doesn't always work. In April, Qatar received a list of 560 children, but only 54 of this list came back. Is that a lot? I don't think so. Out of 19.5 thousand of children, only 1,019 have come back. And each story that they tell is very tragic. However, we have to double our efforts to get these children back. If we move at a pace that we are moving at today, we would need 50, maybe 60 years to get them back. It's very important for us to have Canada today and in the future to stand with Ukraine the way you stand by us, to help us with reintegration programs. And also we ask you to implement more sanctions against people who are perpetrating these war crimes. Thank you.
I would like to invite Mr. Nathaniel Raymond to take the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's an honor to appear before you again, and it's an extra special honor to be able to be here with my colleague, Irina Seslova, who is doing such incredible work on behalf of the children of Ukraine. This morning at 0700 Eastern Standard Time, the Yale School of Public Health Humanitarian Research Lab, as part of the State Department-funded Conflict Observatory, released a new report on the issue of Russia's treatment of children from Ukraine, entitled Russia's Systematic Program of Coerced Adoption and Fostering of Ukraine's Children. This report is the result of a 20-month investigation that has resulted in identification of 314 children from Ukraine. 148 of those 314 children were listed in Russia's child placement databases, including 42 who have already been placed for adoption or guardianship, or who have had a citizen of Russia appointed as their guardian. An additional 166 of these 314 children we have identified using the databases in large part have been placed with citizens of Russia in fostering. I want to state the headline of this research very clearly, because what it shows is that our worst fears are realized. Russia is adopting Ukraine's children systematically in contravention of international law. If you remember, in March 2023, Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova, the Child Rights Commissioner of Russia, were indicted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court. What we are discussing here today is a higher order of crime that, according to Professor Ona Hathaway of the International Law Department at Yale Law School, may constitute crimes against humanity, a higher order of crime. In the initial war crime indictments, the issue was forced deportation. What we are discussing now is transfer of protected persons from one national or ethnic group to another. That was the basis of the 8th Nuremberg trial, known as the Russia trial, against the Nazis for turning Polish children through a process of Germanification into German children during World War II. What we know now is that in addition to the 314 we could identify, there are significantly more Ukrainian children who are basically being posted in these three interconnected databases, one of which is run by the Ministry of Education, one of which is funded directly by President Putin's office through the Presidential Grants Fund, an organization called Anno Trisp. What we know is that these children are fundamentally being offered to Russian families through an act of deception. They are being presented as if they originated in Russia, when in fact they originated in Ukraine. You need to know that underneath Russia's adoption laws, it is a requirement that for a child to be adopted or fostered, they must be a citizen of Russia. Putin, while violating international law, has sought to comply with Russia's child welfare law. And that means he has, with the Duma, and through presidential declaration, working with Maria Lvova-Belova and Anna Kuznetsova of United Russia and the Duma, has created a pipeline for temporary guardianship and proxy conveyance of citizenship to children from Ukraine. This is the sum of all fears, because when children are adopted in Russia, the new parents, quote unquote, the new families can change their name, change their personally identifiable information, and for all intents and purposes, they can disappear. We know that children have gone to 21 regions in Russia, and we think that inside this database there are children from Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. The children we identified are from Donetsk and Luhansk, which were areas underneath Russia's control prior to the 2022 invasion. We think children from areas taken after February 2022 may also be in the database, but we haven't found them yet. Tomorrow morning, I address the United Nations Security Council with U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, and we will bring this issue and this evidence directly to Russia and the members of the Council. It is there that we will have a simple demand. Russia needs to do now.
Would you wrap it up, please? Time is out. Yes.
Is to provide Ukraine and the Red Cross with a list of the kids they took so they can come home. Through you, Mr.
Thank you. And now we pass for period question and answer. I would like to invite Mr. Mike Lake to take the floor for 4 minutes, please.
Yeah, I know that our time's going to be pretty short here. Question that I would just have, Nathaniel, to you is just trying to get a little bit of an understanding of the adoptive parents, so to speak. To what extent do they know the full backgrounds or the backgrounds at all of the kids that they're quote unquote adopting?
That is an excellent question, sir. In the first group of children that were in a test program run by the Moscow region mayor, it is clear that the mayor of Moscow, working with Maria Lvova-Belova, selected previously involved foster parents for the kids who had a clear understanding these children were Ukrainian. We do not know in the post-annexation period, when the database program began, approximately October 2022, we don't know the knowledge that the children's background, what degree of knowledge was given to the quote, new parents. What we do know is the names of many of the parents. We have not published them to protect them from reprisals, but you're asking an excellent question. There are at least two phases to this program. The first is pre-annexation, and the second is post-annexation, and it appears the level of information provided changed between the two.
And I mean, the obvious question with limited time in the conversation is what can Canada do right now to help in this situation? I think everybody around this table recognizes the terrifying, horrifying nature of what's being described today so articulately by our witnesses. What ought we do immediately as first steps?
I was at the Montreal ministerial meeting hosted by Global Affairs Canada, and I can say I was quite impressed by Foreign Minister Jolie and the leadership she took, particularly on the issue of data and data coordination. as I said at that meeting, and I think your government was right alongside me while I said it and agreeing, is that there's really 4 coordination challenges that the international community, with Canada's leadership as a pivotal supporter of Ukraine and a pivotal leader within the ministerial group, the 4 challenges on data, and data is crucial. If we do not have the proper data, we will fail. Okay. So, and the 4 challenges are: 1, a donor support group to ensure long-term, multi-year support so that Ukraine and folks like Irina Soslova and her colleagues have the resources they need to do their job. That's step 1. Step 2 is a technical support group for the Ukrainians on many of the complex identification requirements. The 3rd is the negotiation group with Qatar in South Africa, playing crucial roles with the Holy See. That group needs to grow. It needs to get stronger and more coordinated. And the 4th and final is an information sharing group where nations such as Estonia and those with expertise on digital issues can ensure security and legal compliance for sharing data between law enforcement, civil society, and governments. Those are the 4 challenges. Canada's already engaged, but that's where Canada needs to be. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Limon. Thank you, Mr. Lake. Now I invite Mr. Ahsasi to take the floor. 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Welcome back. Your testimony has always been incredibly helpful. I understand that recently, and you alluded to this in your testimony, you were suggesting that a higher level of crime is involved. I have heard debates amongst various experts that the forcible deportation of children can fall into war crimes, it can fall into crimes against humanity, and it could also be deemed to be committing genocide. What are your thoughts on how it is most properly to be classified? Oh, maybe Mr. Raymond fell off.
You scared him away.
Sure. Okay. Why don't we go to? Hopefully, we'll have Mr. Raymond join us a bit later. Ms. Soslova, thank you very much for your testimony. We heard from previous witnesses about the relentless indoctrination that is happening to these children in the occupied territories. I was wondering if you would want to elaborate on that, because I take it that you're watching developments very, very closely. And if you could provide us with more information, that would be very helpful.
Thank you for the question. It is true that Russia, in contrary to international humanitarian law, Russian changed educational system, militarized. They changed history textbooks, and now they're saying that Ukraine has never existed as an independent state. The second aspect, they're militarizing education. They're creating military camps. They're making military training part of the youth education. They are teaching how to use drones, tactics, military tactics. So we're basically preparing these children and these youth to eventually conscript them and use in the aggression. We're getting a lot of requests from occupied territories how to bring children back to Ukraine so that we help them to do that, especially when they're 16, 17 years old, when they are, and the Russian authorities are trying not to let them leave Russian-controlled territory because they are getting them ready to be conscripted to the Russian army.
To you, Mr. Raymond, thank you for being back. Your testimony is always incredibly helpful. With respect to the forced deportation of children, you are now suggesting that a higher level of crime is involved, having looked at the evidence. I think we lost Mr. Raymond again.
Yes, sorry, he sent an email that he has another event he has to leave. So anyway, you stay.
He was on for a second.
Yeah, that's okay. You have 25 seconds, Ali. I
Sure.
don't know what.
25?
Yes,
Like,
it's
25. Okay.
Do
Ms.
like Mr. Lake.
Soslova, if you could tell us, if you could provide us with any testimony that would demonstrate how brainwashing is taking place with some of these children, that would be much appreciated as well.
A quick answer, please.
Дітям
They've changed the curriculum. They are receiving information from the school and from the surrounding. And once the curriculum was changed, the television, every social system, everything is aimed as to change their outlook, world outlook. And so they don't even need to deport them as they did at the beginning, at the aggression. They've integrated Russian system on our occupied territories, and 1.5 million children are there.
3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Today, we have learned that Mr. Raymond's organization, Humanitarian Research Lab, issued a report this morning. That's what I understand. I was going to put the question to him. There was the names of the perpetrators of the forced adoption. I think Mr. Raymond is back with us. I know it's difficult for you, Mr. Raymond, with your internet connection. Can I ask you this question? Is it possible to send to the committee the report that you published this morning? I understand that there's proof of forced adoption by the Russian regime, adoption of Ukrainian children, there are people who are targeted in the report, from what I understand.
Mr. Raymond?
I'm sorry, I'm just rejoining. I missed the original question and interpretation. My computers have been attacked since Sunday, and this is my third computer. Can you please repeat, sir?
Donc, je recommence la question.
Should I repeat my question? We learned that your organization published a report stating that there's evidence that there's forced adoption by Putin's regime of adoption of Ukrainian children. What I also understand is that you have named those responsible. You have the names of those who are responsible for that operation, this criminal operation. Could you send the committee your evidence, the names of the perpetrators, and if possible, send the committee the report that you published this morning?
Yes, immediately. And the names are listed within it. And we can also provide the underlying data about the children, if so requested by the Canadian government. We have provided that to the government of Ukraine, the National Police, the Ministry of Justice, and to the International Criminal Court. Yes, sir.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Ms. Soslova. I think you have extraordinary expertise. You are the ombudsman for Ukrainian children. According to you, when we look at the 1948 Genocide Convention, the forced adoption of children and brainwashing, is that not an act that violates the 1948 Genocide Convention adopted by the United Nations?
станом на зараз в Україні з
Prosecutor Service of Ukraine have started proceedings on these matters and all the crimes, war crimes, and how to qualify whether it's genocide are dealt with by investigative authorities. Thank you.
Selon vous, est-ce que ça contrevient à la Convention sur le génocide de 48?
In your opinion, the crimes now committed against the Ukrainian children by the Putin regime, brainwashing, forced transfers, and forced adoption, is this a violation of the UN 1948 Genocide Convention?
Sir, it is a subcomponent.
Це підкомпонент злочину
What is called dolorous specialis, which is a finding of special intent. By itself, it is not genocide, but it can, with special intent and combined with other acts, constitute genocide. In our report, we address the legal question of these acts are prima facie by itself, consistent with crimes against humanity alleged. In terms of can this evidence be part of a crime of genocide prosecution? Yes, it could be part of a larger crime of genocide prosecution, but by itself is, without special intent, simply a crime against humanity, which, while grave, is not prima facie genocide.
Thank you. Thank you. Merci, Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. Now I invite Mr.
Thank you, Brunel-Duceppe.
for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for your important testimony in the critical work that you're doing. Ms. Soslova, the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children was launched this past February by both Canada and Ukraine. Global Affairs Canada identified 4 key areas of focus for the coalition: the coordination of joint efforts, information sharing, capacities alignment, and advocacy and communication. Can you please speak to the progress that has been made by the coalition on these key areas since it was launched in February?
On December 8th, there was the first meeting took place. And what is the progress? We have progress in searching for children. We've attracted more partners, teams that are doing verification and search of children. And we have conference, just like Mr. Raymond. Only one team has national Raymonds, and we are very grateful to his team's efforts. But there are other teams all around the world who are helping us to find children. The second question is the registry. We have to have verified data. Without the data, we cannot provide our work on returning children back. We have a good news that the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine, they've opened a registry, and it was announced in Montreal. And we have to collect information from all stakeholders, Ukrainian data and from other government agency, to collect data in one registry, in one database, and to verify these data. And then we'll have a better understanding what are the numbers of children. It's a huge effort, and it has to be done. And this is our homework, and we are supported by our international partners in this work. The third very important part is attracting new intermediary. Currently, we're working with Save Ukraine and Ukrainian Network on Children's Rights, as well as Ombudsman of the Parliament. They work through Qatar or Moskalkova. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have too many children that we were able to repatriate back with the help of international intermediaries. We have to find additional intermediaries, and it's important role of international coalition in this. They can work to find new mediators, new intermediaries between our two countries. The more intermediaries, there will be more opportunities to bring back more children. Thank you.
Mr. John, on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank Mr. Lehman, Madam Soslova for your presence, your good testimony. It's very interesting to the committee, and if you feel some other information may be interested to us, please feel free to send it to the clerk or to myself. We wish you well, and thank you. Thanks for your presence. Is the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting?
No. Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yes.
You forgot to acknowledge that it was Ms. Vandenbeld's birthday.
No, I mentioned it.
No, you
We're all
did
good.
not.
We're all good. It's good. It's fine. It's fine.
Hey, troublemaker.
in
You
public?
are.
What's the big
Meeting is adjourned.
Now you